Yeah.
Yeah. So we should just start, because this is...
So everyone, as you can see, we're it's our first time playing around with this technology and trying to do something live. So it's kind of like fun digital challenges.
Anyway, we should just start, and that's let's go like this. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. We have 15 participants here on our little online course in tasting and listening. So yeah, let's just introduce ourselves.
Yep.
Would you like to start, Janice? We have been working together before. We have been working here in Norway twice, actually 3 times. We have been doing this session with listening to the classical music and pairing it with flavor.
With food and with taste.
Yes, we have with beer and with wine and taste.
And with cider. We like alcohol. So yeah, I can say a little bit about myself. So my name is Janice Wang. I have been locked down in my house in Denmark, in Aarhus, for the last 5 weeks. I work as an assistant professor in the Department of Food Science at Aarhus University. Before that, I did my PhD in Oxford in experimental psychology, where I studied the interactions between what we eat and what we listen to. So then it's quite natural that I should be working on something here where we're trying to apply ideas about how we listen to music to how we can taste food, and also vice versa. We're trying to play with how we can apply what we know about tasting to what we know about food. And I should say that I asked Annabel if everyone could have some wine on hand, not just because I'm an alcoholic, but also because wine is a great passion of mine. I have probably spent way too much time learning and reading and blind tasting wine. So for me, it's very natural to think about wine tasting and how we can apply some knowledge about wine tasting to music.
Yeah. Yes. And we actually got to know each other through dancing tango. This passion, but anyway, I can tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a pianist, and I have an artistic PhD in a Norwegian composer called Fartein Valen. And during these 3 years of really going deep into kind of complex musical material, I started to experiment with letting the audience closer into my process and my practice room, so to say, and talk about artistic processes and my development with the music, my thoughts, my interaction, my doubts, everything that was kind of hidden away when I go on stage and perform. And I noticed that the audience was very grateful for these insights that I shared with them, kind of personal insights. So that became a passion for me to continue opening up the world that I am in when I practice and work with the music. So it's kind of a prolongation of that idea that started back then in 2013.
Yeah, and at least for me, it's actually really, really fun to work with Annabel, because we come from different worlds, but there is really a lot that we have in common in terms of how we approach what we do. And also, as we're talking and preparing and discussing ideas, I think we also find there's a lot of things that we have in common. and it's really fun to just come up with ideas. But I think we should maybe explain a little bit about what we're doing today.
Yes.
Because we had actually planned to put on 2 concerts in Bergen the weekend after the shutdown started. So the day before I was supposed to fly to Bergen, we got notification from Aarhus University that all travel is to be cancelled. That was March 11th. So we had to, in the very, very last minute, cancel what we had planned to do. So, and then instead, we thought maybe we can do something similar on a smaller scale online.
Yes. And that's why you are now here, invited into my practice room and Janice's.
My dining room.
And we are going to work on a musical piece and wine, of course. And we have chosen a piece by the French composer Maurice Ravel. It's a very short piece because it's the second movement of a piano sonatina. And a sonatina is a very small sonata, which is obviously a larger piece. The reason why we picked this music is because his music is very rich and flavorish, and it contains not only melody and harmony, but a lot of what we call flavor in music. So it's very easy to connect with that kind of musical world in relation to food and taste.
Yes. So I think, so this is a piece that we had also used before last year when we were working with beer and also when we were working with cider. So of course today I had asked people if they could have a red wine on hand. If you don't drink wine, beer would be good. Fruit juice might also work. It's just so that we can have this experience where we're simultaneously listening and tasting. And it would be easier for me to talk about some of the parallels between tasting and listening if you also have something on hand. If you could also have something salty, like cheese, I have some peanuts here in this little bowl. That would work too. Mm-hmm. And I think I'll just give a very brief overview so you know where we're going. We're going to be talking about 2 major themes with this piece of music. The first theme has to do with listening from top down or bottom up. And the second theme has to do with listening in context and also tasting in context. And I think what Annabel and I will do is that we will kind of take turns and go back and forth and talk about the same idea as it applies to this piece of music and also as it applies in tasting. And maybe before we start, we should just say that this is obviously the first time we're doing something like this in a digital setting. So there may be technical issues.
We have experienced, we are not on Facebook, but anyway, we are on.
And I don't make 100% guarantee how good the sound quality will be coming through the piano. Yeah. We will see. But Annabel has posted a beautiful video of her playing the piece that you'll hear in its entirety on Facebook. So we were debating actually whether to use videos in this chat or whether we should just do it live. But then we decided that it's better to do it live so you can see her playing live, even though the sound quality might not be like the best, and even though there may be slight delays. Because I think it's important while we're doing this to kind of work through the piece as we're talking about it. And later on, after this live Zoom session is over, we really would encourage you to go back and watch the video that she has uploaded. And you can watch the video and drink the wine and think about what we have talked about today later on when you're watching the video later. So I just wanted to say that before we start. But then Annabel, I hand it over to you.
Yes. What we usually do in this listening tasting session is that I play a part of the piece. I actually play the whole piece, but since the quality is not so well for you not to suffer too much, I play a short part of it, and then we will start working on this these ideas that we have. Yes? That was the first part. And I'm not quite sure how it sounded in your rooms, but I hope it's not too noisy. It's not the best microphone we have. But we are going to talk a bit about high notes and low notes. I want you to listen to this part again and pay attention now to where your ear goes to. Does it immediately go to the lower notes, or does it naturally go to the upper, higher notes? And feel free to chat with us in the chatting box.
Yeah, so you feel free to type in the messages. I'm definitely watching. But I guess from Lynn, she says my ear went to the higher notes, and I have to say I agree with her because for me that melody is so beautiful and it just sticks out, almost like floats on top.
Yes. Do you have anybody else who was listening to?
Yeah, I get Per, Eric, and Claire. So I have 4 people plus me. We're all agreeing that it's very easy to pay attention to the higher notes.
Yeah, and I mean, in this case, there are many reasons why our ear goes to the higher notes, and a particular reason, I guess you all heard that the melody is on top, and it's amazing how a melody actually catches our attention very easily. Why? Because a melody is constructed in a way that it has like a shape, that the pattern is like a pattern that repeats sometimes. So the melody in this case is rising, and then it repeats, but with the third note. Yes? And then you have the peak note. So it has this journey from beginning, a little more, and reaching the top, and going down from the top. So this shape, it kind of catches our ear very easily. But what my point is that when does it help that I come closer to the machine when I talk? Good, because that's where the microphone is.
Yes.
I read once that was the pianist Arthur Rubinstein. He was saying, why do we always have to play the melody so loud? Is it because we want the audience to, you know, catch them or like really hang on to our listeners? Why don't we let the melody take care of itself? And I found that sentence beautiful because something that is so easy to listen to and so easy to see and to hear, yeah, maybe we can just acknowledge that it's there and then try to pay attention to what is going on underneath the very penetrating melody. And in this case, if we leave the melody alone for a while, I will leave it out for a while, we can hear that the accompaniment is very beautiful. So you have this kind of bell ringing. You hear?
Yes.
So if we try now, when I play this part again, try to let the melody take care of itself and see what happens if you listen from down to up instead.
Yeah, and feel free to post your thoughts on the chat window. But I can say that for me, all of a sudden, the music sounded so much more three-dimensional. Because before it's very floaty, because I'm focusing on this melody, is very, very pretty. It was kind of sitting on top. And then all of a sudden, listening from the bottom, it just feels like the whole structure kind of expanded, rehydrated even. So then I feel like it's more like I'm listening through this 3D structure rather than just the 2D line on top. And of course, obviously, I'm not there with the piano. I'm missing out on, so much depth and flavor that you get from the real life performance.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it has also to do with, tones, notes are vibrations. And the higher the note, the more vibration, the faster the vibration of the note is. So you might also feel that the higher notes has more energy, and the lower note, they are more round, and they have different energies.
It's definitely a different sort of energy, because the vibration is lower, but it's slower.
Yeah.
And I think I almost feel like I can feel the vibrations from the piano, but I think that's also because I've been there and I know this piano.
Of course, a lot of vibrations that is lost when we digitalize the music.
Yes.
So we have to kind of imagine how this will sound live, and you have to go and to hear this piece live once in your lifetime to experience it fully.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's actually quite funny that last time, after we played this piece last year, I actually downloaded the sheet music.
Yeah.
So yes, to try and play it myself, although I haven't gotten there yet.
But the idea was, you can have a choice when we listen to music in which perspective we actually listen, in the dimension of high or low, from bottom up or from up to down. And it can change our perspective on the music.
And I think you can kind of extend that principle to, in general, how, we sometimes just either go for the most noticeable thing or the easiest thing. And we kind of lose track of, and I say this because I used to sing in choir in university, and I was an alto. So I feel like, it's the altos who are doing a lot of the hard work, who's providing the color for the piece. And, people would notice if we weren't there. But everyone just listens to the soprano and the beautiful line. And I feel like there are so many things in the world that operates that maybe we take for granted and we don't notice how important it is. And maybe as a mindful exercise, it's interesting to think about it from a different level. That said, I think I'm going to take the same principle and change it to wine tasting. So if you have a glass of wine or a glass of beer or a glass of any other beverage with you, now is the time to take it out, because I will walk you through a little bit of tasting. So I asked for a red wine because for me, this piece of music felt to me more like a red wine than a white wine. I won't go into too much detail. You can read the paper that I posted on the Facebook for more details on this kind of music wine matching. And I specifically had asked Annabel if she could tell people to use a Pinot Noir, because if you know about wine, Pinot Noir has this beautiful transparency that I think really goes well with this piece of music. That said, I don't have a Pinot in front of me because I don't have one at home that is ready to be drunk yet. Instead, I have a Lange from the Piedmont 2013 here. And I picked this wine because, well, before I say why I picked this wine, let's have a taste of whatever we have. So if we're tasting wine, assuming you have wine, what you should do is first, we give the wine a little swirl. And then I like to smell the wine holding the glass at a 45-degree angle, smelling from the top of the glass. And when I'm smelling the wine, I like to take a good sniff, and I actually try to get air from both the nose and the mouth. This sounds a little bit crazy, but that's because I'm trying to get the wine in through orthonasal olfaction through the nose, and also retronasal olfaction, what happens in the back of the throat. And I also close my eyes because I try to narrow down my focus. So then I'm only just focusing on the smell. I do it so often that I don't even notice when I do it. When I look at pictures of myself wine tasting, I'm always closing my eyes. So that's why. So give it a good sniff. And then when you're tasting the wine, try to take a sip of wine and keep it in your mouth for longer than you think you should. Because I think one mistake with wine tasting is that people usually just put it in the mouth and then they just swallow. But a lot of the characteristics of wine, and I think this also applies to beer, coffee, and any other complex beverage, is that it kind of unravels slowly over time. So try to keep the wine in your mouth for a good 10, 20 seconds. And again, you want to be aerating the wine. So you want to work it, swoosh the wine around your mouth, because the more you aerate the wine, the more the volatiles in the wine are being released, and it's floating up, and then you're picking it up through retronasal olfaction in the back of the throat. So.
Don't make her laugh, eh?
No, I'm gonna be spelling my wine on the computer. And now this is the audience participation time. If you're tasting a wine or beer or beverage, if you could go to the chat and write down 2 flavors that you perceive in your beverage.
Oh.
And I will type this myself as well. I love the fact that we have 3 cherries. Almonds and tannins. And there's a reason why I'm asking everyone to strawberry oak to write down their notes, because I'm going to pick 2 of these notes to talk about in a second. Okay, blueberries and forest. It's very funny how almost everybody is posting, ooh, sour beer. Oh, May is drinking a delicious sour beer that she gave me once. It's from Brooklyn something, and I really wish I had more of that. But because we have so many fruit flavors, I'm going to focus on 2 flavors to talk about. One is cherry, and I think the other one I talk about will be, let's say, smoke, because I think cherry and smoke are kind of good, different things. Okay, so now, if you can get on your chat again, now everyone, even if you don't have a drink, can participate. My question for you is, if you think about the range of notes on a piano from high to low, red cherry, is that a high note or is that a low note? Please type on the chat. And Annabelle, you can do this too.
I can't read this.
No, I can see that.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay, so we have hi, 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 hi. Wow. Okay, this is the fun thing about live audience participation, because it's almost a 50-50. I think it's slightly more high than low, but mostly high. And now I want you to think about smoke, the flavor of smoke. Is that a high or is that a low note? Again, please type on the keyboard. And from what I can see so far, we have a ton of consistency here. Now everyone thinks smoke is low. So, and neither. Okay, fine. And this might seem like a silly question, but this is actually a lot of what I spent my PhD looking at. I actually looked at taste pitch correspondences, which is what are the natural associations that we make between basic tastes and pitch. So for example, what actually in the last 10 years, not only my research, but also from other researchers around the world, we have quite consistently found that low pitch is matched with bitter taste and that high pitch is matched with sweet and sour tastes. Now, of course, I was talking about taste, not about flavor. Now, when it comes to flavor, it is a little bit more difficult to do research because whereas for taste, we know there are several basic tastes, like sweet, sour, bitter, salty, umami, possibly metallic, possibly fatty. When it comes to flavor, there's basically an endless array of flavors. So it's very difficult to do any systematic investigation. But we do have some evidence that people tend to associate fruity, citrus, floral aromas and flavors with high pitch. And people tend to associate earthy, smoke, game, leather with low pitch. And there's actually also an association with perfumery, whereas in perfumery, the top notes tend to be the floral, citrus, fruity, fresh notes. And the bottom notes tend to be things like civets, ambergris, also woods. So kind of this darker, now I'm just throwing all the sensory modalities into place. But my point was I wanted to pick a red wine because in red wine, it is much easier to find flavors that we tend to match with high notes and also flavors we tend to match with low notes. So for example, with this Italian Longer that I have here, it's a bit difficult to talk about because it's not 100% Nebbiolo like is typically from Piedmont. This is a blend. But at the same time, I'm getting these cherry notes that would be matched with high pitch. And at the same time, because it's a 2013, I'm getting quite a bit of earth, of game, of leather, which would be low notes. And I would say when drinking this, it's a little bit like listening to the Ravel, in that the first time I'm tasting the wine, the first thing that hits me immediately is the acidity and the red cherries. That becomes immediately clear. What becomes more clear if I pay attention to the wine and if I let it sit in my mouth are the lower toned flavors. For example, this has been slightly oaked, the leather, the forest. And I actually have to purposely pay attention to the lower notes in order to perceive them clearly because the higher notes are so dominant. So now after I've said all that, what I invite you to do is let's take 2 sips of the wine. The first time, pay attention to the higher notes in your wine or your beer, your beverage. And in the second sip, let's pay attention to the lower notes in the beverage. So here goes sip number 1. And it's very important. My master's student, Tadas, is also here, so I can talk about this. Tadas used to work in a very upscale wine restaurant in Lithuania. And he's doing a research project with me looking at complexity of wine and what makes a wine complex. But something that I found out of this research is that what's really important is the finish of the wine. Because in the study design that we had people record their impressions of a wine up to 90 seconds after they have swallowed. And it's actually really amazing what you can still taste in the mouth after you swallow. And it's because of this research that now when I taste wine, I actually try to just pay attention even after I've swallowed, because there's so many things going on. So that's why I was taking some time to pay attention to the finish. Okay, so now sip number 2. Please pay attention to the lower notes in your beverage. So Annabel, I kind of know what your wine should taste like.
My wine, because I have, you know what wine I'm drinking.
Yes, because I'm familiar with the producer and the region and the style. But do you find a difference when you're tasting it from top down and bottom up?
Yes, I noticed that the high pitch, the high notes in the wine kind of hits my nose. The lower pitch, it's kind of tickling down here.
And in the bottom, like almost the bottom of the throat.
Yeah, but I was thinking about something in the sense of the piano here. And that is actually the balance between the high notes and the low notes and the flavors in between. Because when I play, I always have to find a balance in the chord, how actually strong I play the different notes.
Yes. So
I'm not sure if you can actually hear this in this transfer through the web, but when I play, for example, here. I have this melody here. And then I have my right hand doing. So I have to be balancing it so the main line always reaches out and is audible to the audience. So in this case, it's this rising melody. And this one, the top note can be slightly lower now. And then you have this middle voice, which creates a beautiful dialogue with the left hand. So I try to make these two voices be clear to each other. So that means there's actually 4 different flavors going on in this hand.
Yeah, and there's a lot of interrelations between them.
You have the lower nose, and then you have the middle register on both hands, so they have the 3, and then you have the highest notes in this, and it's all about balance.
Yes, it's exactly if you're a winemaker and you're trying to make a wine, it's really almost the same, because with this red wine, for example, on the one hand you have the acidity, which is like your high notes, that it can be very easily dominating. And then you have the tannins, which are kind of like the low notes. It's providing structure in a different way. And then you have the alcohol and the body that's acting like a binding agent that's integrating your tannins and your acidity together. And the trademark of a good winemaker is to be able to balance the different elements. so that when you're drinking it, not one element dominates more than the other. Okay, but I think we should move on to our second theme, because otherwise I'll just talk about winemaking all day long. Okay,
yes.
so
our second theme, it's about context.
yes.
And I want you to think for a moment about a song or a piece of music that means especially much to you. It might be a piece that you have heard in a very special situation that made this song or this piece of music very close to the heart. Do you have such a piece?
Yep, I do.
Yes. And have you experienced listening to the same music many years later in a different setting? Or if you
Yes.
put it on now and what happens with your experience of the music?
Well, at least for me, I can say that, well, first, depending on the setting, sometimes it's very unexpected. Like I can actually give a personal anecdote. Once I was at a music psychology conference, actually, in Belgium. And at the dinner of the conference, they suddenly started playing a tango. It was really strange. And for a moment, I was like, shit, am I at a milonga? What is going on? But in general, I think with music, it brings back memories of, especially if it's a piece of music that has a lot of deep personal connection to you, it kind of brings me back to that moment in time.
Mm. So we can definitely say that we keep with us a context where we have heard the music enter the presence.
Yes.
We have as human beings an ability to connect the past with now on a very large scale. And in a while, we're going to hear in the music how this can actually be a tool for us when we listen to music that lasts for a long time. We'll see. But you and wine, there's also a context.
I mean, so I should say that's the whole point of my research. It's because I study how context, how the environment, how does the lighting and how does the music and how does your mood, how does everything except the food change the way you taste the food? So in fact, context-based tasting is what I do on a daily basis. But with wine in particular, there's this really famous effect called the Provençal rosé effect, where if you're drinking one of these terribly fashionable pale Provençal rosés, it tastes wonderful if you're sitting in Provence or in the Côte d'Azur in the summer on the beach. You're having your mussels, you're sitting outside, everything is fantastic. And then if you buy a bottle and you bring it back to England or Scandinavia, and you're drinking it in the dead of winter when it's dark and rainy, it really doesn't taste very good. To be fair, Provençal rosés mostly don't taste very good, but that's a personal preference. But this effect is so popular that it's actually coined the Provençal rosé paradox. And that is to demonstrate how the same wine and food in general can taste very, very different depending on the context. I mean, if you eat a food when you're fighting with your partner versus, if you're deeply in love, that's also going to taste completely different.
But let's bring it into the more musical context here now.
Yep.
So context, that can also be, we can also call it surroundings, yes? So one note can be this note, for example. It sounds different like this than this. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
So this very note gets its identity through the chord that is under. We can say that for a fact in a way. Yes, it takes the flavor of the context. Okay, so what does it mean for us as listeners? We have kind of a long-term memory also when we listen to music. So when we hear a melody or an incident or a note in the beginning of the piece, we keep that memory with us inside or into the piece. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So when we hear the beginning here, and then the section is going to repeat. And I like to use the image of that the music makes footprints in the snow. Yes, so you see this field of white, untouched snow, and the first notes that a piece sounds in us, it's like making these first footprints. So it's kind of in the beginning it's just silence, and then this music is appearing. It's very fresh. It's very innocent in a way. And then later on in the piece, some more dramatic is happening. You have the big build up. And after this moment of tension, of course, you have to listen to this afterwards in the whole, so just fragments. But after this climax, there's a point where the music is kind of turning backwards and trying to go home. So you have and then the same melody as in the beginning appears again. But what has changed?
The harmony.
Listen. Yes, you can hear if you pay attention to the lower notes. It has this descending movement, while in the beginning there was an uplifting movement, yes? So yes, there is a difference. We could go into that a little bit, asking how does that affect the mood of the music? Can we have a little interaction in the chat just to find some nice description of the mood of the beginning of the piece? What kind of I can't find a better word than mood at right now. The character of the music. For me, it's very light-hearted.
Yeah, I think when you said innocent, I think that's a really good description.
Do you have any more nice personal?
I get hopeful.
Yeah, but maybe hopeful. Yeah, nice. Hopeful. Yes, that's a nice word, because hopeful is like, okay, what is going to happen? There is something that is promising.
Yeah, and it's like very positive hope.
Yeah, tender nostalgia. Yeah.
Early morning. Oh, yeah, totally.
Absolutely. So the whole piece is like a journey towards the night. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Spring. Yeah. And that spring is like also something that is about to burst.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you also would feel that if I hadn't have this pre-talk about this piece when you hear the beginning. But what about when the melody comes back, the melody is a little bit slower as from Ravel's hand, and the harmony is changed. What mood do you get now? It is just the two first bars of this that is changed when the harmony goes down.
So Jennifer says adventure ahead.
Oh yeah, that was from the beginning, yes. But now when it afterwards.
So yeah, nostalgia or longing, curious. So personally, I get a lot of nostalgia just with the first three chords. Like I feel like it's forward looking or backwards looking. In the beginning it's forwards looking, and then towards the middle when you play it again it's like looking back.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Defeated hope. That's so sad, Maria.
There's something like lost about it. But you have to hear what Ravel is doing after this. I can't play it now. I will leave it to you when you hear the whole piece, because after this has happened, it's dying, and then right before the piece is going to end, something big is happening. So it's like a bird phoenix is rising from ashes and says, okay, yes, just one last time. The cathedral has to come up from the water or something.
That's a beautiful description.
Beautiful music. But before I let you go into the wine again, I just wanted to tell you or share with you what this kind of insight or knowledge, if you can call it, does to my listening to the music. It means that in order to experience fully something that is happening after 3 minutes into a piece or half an hour into a piece, to really experience what a particular place can do to you emotionally, you have to be connected from the very start. Or you can also listen to the music and disconnect many times, but there is some kind of correspondence between the beginning and the middle and the end that is possible for us as human beings to experience only if we are active as listeners and actually connect with the first note and follow the journey all the way without any judgment, just to see where it takes. Like you said, there was someone's adventure. January, you said adventure ahead. If you go into the concert hall, you're going to hear a piece of music that's going to last an hour. It's a Bruckner symphony or a Mahler symphony or a piano sonata by Beethoven. It's going to be 40 minutes. It's like getting onto the horse and stay there. Don't start thinking about your ex-girlfriend or like, what shall I have for dinner tomorrow? It's like, just be in it and see where it takes you. And think about how the context of time actually also impacts the way we connect with music. I think that can be very strong. It can create a very strong connection to the music.
No, that is really beautiful. I feel like you can almost make the same analogy with reading a book. It's about building a personal relationship with the characters, or watching TV. It's almost the same. If you don't have a context for what happened before, then whatever page you're reading doesn't make as much sense.
But how about context and wine? Since
yeah, so now that you've made this beautiful analogy with music, I feel like what I'm about to do with wine is slightly bit more artificial, I have to say. because you're, okay, with some wines, yes, I can spend the whole hour just drinking a glass. But the demonstration that I want to do is a little bit more short term. And I wanted to talk about wine and food pairing, actually. Because the wine that we have in the glass, of course, it doesn't always taste the same. Even in the same wine, if I taste it and then I wait for half an hour and taste it again, it will taste different because of oxidation, because my palate will have changed. But also when I'm pairing it with food. So if you have something salty on hand, or even if you don't, even have something sweet or anything, I want you to try tasting some food and then have the wine afterwards and pay attention to how it changes.
I have some boring Norwegian cheese here. I hope it's okay. It was the best I could find.
Hey, I have salty
No,
peanuts.
it's not. It's Norwegian. Yeah. You have salty crackers.
Yeah. Of course, the field of wine and food pairing is also very large, and one can just spend many, many hours talking about it. But in general, I wanted to show an example of something salty, because there's a reason why in many bars they give you something salty to taste when you're drinking. Oh, I see May said peanuts makes the beer taste richer and salty.
Oh.
And for wine, salty foods and also actually sour foods will usually bring out the fruitiness, the alcohol, and the richness of a wine.
My father is Spanish, and he said to me that in Spain, if there is a cheap wine, they might serve something salty to it. So
yeah, because the salt will bring up the fruitiness and make it taste kind of richer and riper. Of course, if you have a wine that's already, say, 15% alcohol and very big, you might not want to have something salty with it. So instead, you might want to have something sweet or something umami, because that will bring out the acidity of the wine. So it's also about this balancing game. And if you're having a wine with a meal, it's almost a little bit like with the Ravel piece, because whenever you have wine with a meal, I would always encourage you to first taste the wine by itself before you've had any food. So that could be the adventure, the start. And then it's very fun to play with eating different foods on your plate and paying attention to how does that make the wine taste different. I think the important thing is to not take what we put in our mouth for granted, and really to pay attention to how are the flavors changing. You know, is it changing because of what I'm eating, or is it changing because, you know, is it noisy? Is it changing because of what I'm feeling? So there are all of these contextual factors that influence how we taste food.
There was an interesting comment earlier here that maybe connect to this, because there was Lynn saying, I wonder, is this related to what is going on in the world, and
that we're seeking something lighter,
and to need to feel lighter. I feel personally in this time when we are going through a tough time with the virus, and we have to kind of redefine our lives, because we have to be inside, or we have to be together, a lot of people in the same house for a long time. We can't work, or we have to work differently. There's a lot of redefining, and I think absolutely that it's a possibility to expand our minds now, like seeking towards deeper and more richer and more fuller experiences of music and food and life itself. For me, I mean, I have been much closer to music in this period than I have been when I'm like running around and doing a lot of stuff that life provides, you know. A lot of time for contemplation. So
yeah, I think contemplation is a really good word. I have actually been trying to just have silence sometimes. And of course, it's not really silence because I live in the countryside and it's always very nice to have birds. But it's actually really nice to just have moments of kind of inward looking, so to speak.
And that's where the music can enter actually in our bodies and our ears. It's out from this inner silence. I think that's what, at least with this speech today, or this meeting, or what we shall call it, this interactive wine tasting period, it's about experiencing things more deeper and fully, and especially for me to say that about in connection with music. Just stay in it and experience what the music itself has to offer.
Fantastic. So normally when we do this live, this is when Annabel would play the whole thing.
Yes.
Now with the wine. But would you like to play, or do you think we should just direct people to the video on the Facebook page?
I think the sound is so bad for you now. It's so distorted, and it's a little bit better on the video that I posted. So I leave it to you to hear the piece, but I definitely leave you also to hear the piece in live once, because there is a dimension with music that you haven't experienced this last hour. But you have experienced it with the tasting. But you have had your own glass of wine, and you can actually taste and be connecting with what she's talking about. But through this internet and machine, there is a dimension that goes that is disappearing, and that is the world of the vibration of the harmonics in the music. Notes, they are alive. They're not dead. It's not sound. When sound becomes music is when the notes connect to each other, and they connect through the vibrations of the harmonics, and the harmonics are hardly audible. They're not audible through this machine. So the liveness of the music, the real connection, is only possible to experience in a concert hall, in my opinion. There's a dimension there that is lost through this media. So when you are finished with this coronavirus quarantine, go to concerts, enjoy the live performance of music.
It's really a paradox at the moment, because on the one hand, we're really being forced to rely on these digital technologies. Yeah. And as a researcher, I have to say it's actually a really fruitful moment for me, because I'm very interested in working on how do we deliver remote eating experiences even when we're not transferring the food. But on the other hand, I think it's also making us realize what is really valuable and can't be replaced with digital technology, no matter how much we try. So that's actually a brilliant segue, because this is the first time we've done this in a remote setting, and we are very curious about how you thought this went and what aspects do you think could be improved in this kind of digital setting. So I think what I will do is we made like a very, very short questionnaire that takes 1 minute. I will put a link on the Facebook page instead, so then more people can see it. And if you could all be so kind as to go to the questionnaire, it takes literally a minute to just give us some feedback. We would really appreciate it. Because while this is really not as nice as doing it physically, it's a cool opportunity, because now we have people here from Argentina, from Sweden, from Norway and Denmark, and from all over the place that we would never be able to get in the same place. So it's both, good and bad.
Yes, and it has been really nice to see you all, and take care in these times, and I hope to see you live one day. Maybe you invite us, maybe you come to Bergen or to Denmark once. And thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. This was really fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.